Have you ever heard of CI/CD pipeline or CI/CD in general? Well, what is CI/CD? CI/CD stands for continuous integration and continuous delivery or deployment. In our previous videos, you might have seen that we built Spring Boot application and we have deployed that application on AWS Elastic Beanstalk. But that process was quite manual. We have to write the code, and after writing the code, we have manually tested the code, as well as we have built the code, we have deployed the code manually. We want to automate the process. Now in modern software development, we are already following methodologies like Agile. Now when it comes to deployment or when it comes to releasing that application, of course we have to follow something very innovative, and that's where we are following something called CI/CD, which is an integral part of DevOps. With the CI/CD, we automate the entire process of releasing the software. It comprises of two parts: continuous integration and continuous delivery. Let's discuss more about it. So what is continuous integration? Continuous integration basically comprises of three parts. Once again, it consists of build, test, and merging to a repository. Next is continuous delivery. What is continuous delivery? It automatically releases that application or your code or any other source code repository that you are using. Next is continuous deployment. So what is continuous deployment? With continuous deployment, we automatically deploy that application on our desired platform. May it be AWS Elastic Beanstalk, may it be AWS Kubernetes service, or it might be anything. So let's get started with the process of building our CI/CD pipeline using AWS code pipeline. Now when we are building CI/CD pipeline, there are lots of tools available, right? So one of the very popular tools that we have called Jenkins. In some other video, I'm going to show you Jenkins as well, but in this video is particularly with AWS code pipeline and AWS code build. Let's get started. So first thing that we are going to do is to create a repository, right? So first we are going to create a Git repository. Let's do this. So I'm going to go to my GitHub, and over here I'm going to create a new repository. Let's give a name called Spring Boot AWS pipeline. Let me just create the repository. That's cool, right? So we have created the repository. Next, what we are going to do, we are going to clone the repository. Let's clone the repository. Let's copy this, and I'm going to clone the repository on my local machine. So let me open the terminal. So let me clone it here. Git clone. Let's paste it. So we have cloned this repository. Now what we are going to do, we are going to create a Spring Boot application from scratch. So let's build the Spring Boot application. Let's go to our favorite website for building the Spring Boot application. Cool. So we got this page, and over here we are going to create an application. Let's select the latest version over here, and let's give something com.rds.example. I mean, let's keep it very simple, and I'm going to give a name called Spring Boot CI/CD. Cool. And other things, let us keep it very simple, and make sure to keep it as jar. Don't select var. Make sure to keep it as jar only. Okay, so next thing, you can select any version of Java. I am okay with the Java 17. I would suggest you to choose either 17 or 21. Don't select 22. You might not get a proper runtime on AWS for 22. Now, what are the dependencies that we need? I'm going to add only one dependency. Which dependency? Which is the web dependency. We are going to create a very minimal application, so we are just going to add the web dependency. That's all. And I'm going to generate the project. Make sure to use Maven. Our steps should be written in Maven, so that's why we are make sure to use Maven rather than Gradle. Let's generate the application, and it will get downloaded. Open the application. So go to the applications folder, right? So root folder, and we don't need all the files, but for time being, I'll just copy everything, and we are going to paste it on our repository. So the repository just now that we have created. So this is the folder, Spring Boot AWS pipeline. So here I'm pasting everything. So that's cool, right? So our application we have created, and what we are going to do right now, we can open this application using IntelliJ IDEA or any suitable ID that you want to choose. So I have already opened the project over here, and you'll be able to see that the project is being loaded. So let's keep it as it is, or we can just create a simple API over here and run it. So let's create a new package here, and let's write .api. And over here, we are just going to create a basic API. Let's create a Java class, and we'll just write hello world API. Fine. And as usually we know, for a Spring Boot application, we are going to annotate with a REST controller. And over here, we are just going to write maybe hello world, and just we are going to write at the rate get mapping. That's all. And one more thing that you have to make sure, that I told you in previous videos as well, when you are running something on AWS Elastic Beanstalk, make sure to use the port 5000. So I'll just make the port to 5000, server.port 5000. This is a mandatory thing. Don't forget to do this. Our application is ready. We can run it on our local machine and we can test it, right? For time being, we can just run it on our local machine to test this application. So how do you run this application? I'll just select this and run as Spring Boot, right? So the application has been started and we can just check it, right? So we can just go to our browser and over here we can just write localhost, which is 5000 and just 5000, localhost 5000. If I slash and I'm getting hello world, that's fine, right? My application is running fine on my local machine. That's cool. Now let's get started with AWS right now. So how do you do? First of all, I'll go to my console home, and the interesting thing this time, I'm going to create a fresh everything from scratch, because if I'm using the North Virginia, I already created a lot of application on this region, and lots of things are already done. Maybe security groups, or it might be service rule and so on. So I don't want you guys to feel like that my things are already set up, or I have done a lot of things behind the scene or behind the camera. Let's do everything from scratch. So I'm going to use a different region which I haven't used previously, maybe US East 2. Let me choose this, and you guys also will get, if I'm getting some error, I mean if you guys are getting some error, I'm also going to get the same error, so don't worry about it. Let's get started with Elastic Beanstalk right now over here. So let's create an application on Elastic Beanstalk. So what is Elastic Beanstalk, how it works, I have already explained in my previous videos. Make sure to watch the video. You can click on this icon and you can watch the video. Let's go to Elastic Beanstalk first of all, and what we are going to do, we are going to create an application. How do you create an application? Let's go to create an application. Let's go to we are going to select a web server environment. Let's give a name called same thing like Spring Boot CI/CD. Okay, Spring Boot CI/CD. That's cool, right? Any other things that you want to write? That's fine, right? We don't want to make any changes. That's cool, right? So manage platform. What is the platform that we are going to use? Of course, it's going to be Java. And then anything we want to make changes, you can choose a sample application. You can upload your code. It's your choice. We are going to go with a sample application initially, and we are okay with a single tier instance. We don't want anything else, right? So these are the things that we want to do. Let's go to next. What's happening? We have to create. So I'm going to use, right? So I'm going to create and use a new service role, right? Because you also might not be having the service rule. So let's create and use a new service rule over here, right? And choose key pair. We don't need it. We don't need to log into this machine using SSH, so it's not needed. And third thing is like EC2 instance profile. So EC2 instance profile, you might be able to see some of the instance profile I'm already having. Make sure to create your own. I have already explained in my previous video. If you don't get your instance profile, how to create the instance profile, please watch the video by clicking here. Now let's click on next. Choose a VPC. We are going to select the default VPC, whatever the default VPC is we are already having. We are going to choose that. We are going to choose some availability zones and make sure to use the public IP address activated. Let's use all the zones, or if at all you want to select only one, it's your choice. We don't mind. And next is we are not using database, so please ignore this portion. We are not enabling the database. Other part, please ignore everything and click on next. Next, what we are going to do, let's not make any changes here. As it is, no changes. You want to keep a security group, so you can choose the default security group. That's fine. Anything else that you want to apply, I'm fine. I don't want to make any changes. Everything seems fine. Okay, let's click on next. Any health reporting you want, so you can change it to basic, or it might be enhanced. Doesn't really matter. It's your choice. We are okay with anything here, right? So I'll change it to basic. I don't want so much monitoring over here, and I don't want the manage updates as well, right? So let's keep it very simple. And other things, I don't want to make changes. Keep it as it is. No changes to anything over here, just as it is. Look at this, and next, click on next, and everything seems fine. So what we are going to do, we are going to submit. Okay, so you would be able to see that it might take some time once you submit it, right? So it will take some time to launch the environment. Let's wait for it. Also, by the time it launches the environment, let me tell you a couple of other things that we are going to use. So here we are going to use certain tools. Obviously we are using Git as our source code repository. So we are using Git, and from Git, what we are going to do whenever we are making any commit, or we are going to push the code to GitHub. So we need somebody to look after this, and that somebody is going to be our code pipeline. So here we are going to use code pipeline, which is an AWS service, and which is going to look at this Git repository continuously, and anytime if it finds any new commit on this repository, it will pull the code and it will do build, right? So for building, we have another service over here. So we do have something called code build. So over here, what is going to happen, code build will build that applications, and we will write some steps over here. So code build is going to build that application. It's going to get the application from code pipeline, and it's going to build that application. So there would be certain steps that we are going to write, wherein we will mention there is a script that we are going to write, and wherein we will mention that what are the things that has to be done. For example, a very good example is like we have for Maven, right? So if at all I want to build an application using Maven, we write a command called mvn package or mvn install. So these are the commands that we will set up. So finally, we are going to use AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So I have an icon over here, so I'll be using that icon. And this is our Elastic Beanstalk, and we are going to deploy this to our Elastic Beanstalk. I'm not pretty much sure whether this is the right icon for Elastic Beanstalk or not, but please excuse me if it's not the right icon. Finally, we are going to deploy it. We are going to deploy that application. Behind the scene, there is one more AWS service that will work called code deploy. So right now we are going to deploy this on our Elastic Beanstalk. So every time we make some changes, we are going to make some commit and push the code to my Git repository, and remaining things should be done automatically. I don't need to do with this manually. That's how the things are going to work. Let's see. The first thing that we are going to do, let's see whether my application is ready or not. Yes, my application is ready. That's really great. If at all I want to upload and deploy the application, for time being, I can do that, and I can check if it is running fine on AWS or not. So I can do that. So for that, I will build that application. I'll come to my Spring Boot over here, and obviously I have to build that application. So I'll just go to my, right now I'm not having anything, right? So you see target folder is empty, and I'll set a final name for this application. So I'll just go to the project properties and be choosing a final name. So what is the final name? Let's keep it same as the artifact ID. So what we were going to do, $project.artifact ID. Let's see what is the artifact ID. So already we are having the artifact ID over here, right? So we have artifact ID Spring Boot CI/CD. So that same name would be used for the final, right? So you don't add additional that snapshot and blah blah blah. So that's fine. So let's build that application. So how do you build this application? We know it very well, right? So all that we need to do, we can use the terminal or anything that we want, right? So anything could be fine. I have Maven tools installed, or you can use terminal, anything is fine. So in this Maven tool, I'm just going to do a Maven. You can see different plugins are there, and I'm going to use a lifecycle package. So this will create my application, right? So let's see, right? So the application is being created, and look at this, the build is successful. So let me expand the target folder, and we see we got this Spring Boot CI/CD.jar file. Let's upload this application on AWS right now. So first of all, what I'm going to do, upload and deploy, and let's choose the file. I'll go to the target folder, and we got this jar file, and let's open this and let's deploy it. Again, it will take some time. We have to wait for 2-3 minutes. Okay, so the deployment is going on, right? So updated the application, right? So let's see this, right? So it says that it is successfully done. Let's verify. I'll come to, rather than going to localhost 5000, what I'm going to do right now, I'll see I'll use this link, right? So you can see the link over here. So let's click on this link right now, and let's open this link in a new tab, and let's see this, what's happening over here. Okay, so still it's showing the previous application. So as of now, the new application haven't been uploaded. It's still going on, right? So as I told you, right, it will take 2 to 3 minutes depending on your internet speed and machine speed and a lot of other things. See, once it gets updated, I will get to know, right? So you see still it's going on. Okay, now we can see that the deployment is successful. Now we can just go to my Elastic Beanstalk once again. And right now I'll refresh it. Boom, right? So we got our application, right? Look at this, hello world. And let me make it a little bit bigger so that everybody would be able to see it. Okay, so the application is running fine right now. And let's set up our CI/CD pipeline right now. How do you do this? As I told you, we are going to go to my AWS once again. Let's keep this page intact. And what I'm going to do, I'll go to services and I'll search for a service called code pipeline. Code pipeline. So you can see we have code pipeline. Open the code pipeline. So you'll be able to see that right now I don't have any pipeline created. So I'll click on this create pipeline. Let's click on create pipeline. Let's give a name to this pipeline. So Spring Boot CI/CD. Next, let it be right queued. I don't want to make any changes. I will go with a new service role. We don't want to make any changes here. No variables, nothing is required. So just click on next. Next, source provider. What is the source provider that we are going to use? So you see there are multiple source provider that we are having, right? We can use AWS Code Commit, which is again similar to GitHub, that is from AWS. Then we have other things, other options like Bitbucket, we have GitLab and so on, right? So what we are going to use, we are going to choose GitHub and make sure to choose the version true, right? So version 1 is not recommended and you should use version 2. So let's go with the version 2 and connection. Once we reach here, what we are going to do, we are going to click on connect to GitHub. So right now we are going to click on connect to GitHub. Let's give a name, right? So we are just going to give a Spring Boot CI/CD connection. That's cool. Spring Boot CI/CD connection. That's all. Connect to GitHub. We are going to click on connect to GitHub, and right now over here, we will install a new app. I'm already having some app, but I'm not going to use it, right? So I'm going to click on install a new app so that you can, once again, you can get everything from scratch. So right now it will take you to your GitHub profile and select the repositories. You can give access to all repositories, which is not recommended. We'll use the only repositories and we can use that. Our repository Spring Boot AWS pipeline, right? So this is our repository, right? So this is our repository. So we're going to give the access to this repository only. That's all. We're going to save this and we are pretty much okay with it. And we are going to click on connect. So it will create the connection right now. So we can use this connection. In order to use this connection, go back to previous page and right now very carefully, right? So you might not be able to see the recent connection that we have created right now, right? So how would you able to see this? First of all, we will go back to any other thing and then I'll click on version 2 once again so that it should reload the things that we have created. So the connection that we have created, Spring Boot connection, Spring Boot CI/CD connection, right? So this is the one that we have created. Let's click on this and right now we are going to get the repository name. So automatically this is the repository name which will come here, and the default branch by default it will take the we will use the main branch or master branch by default. So that's fine. And output artifact format, so we are going to, you see, a code pipeline default. We don't want the full clone, so we are okay to go with the code pipeline default. Then we have we don't want to apply any trigger. Click on next. Okay, so we will choose the no filter here and click on next. Achha, okay, we have to give a default branch, so that option is not coming right now. So what we are going to do, we'll just write a main, right? So that's cool, right? So main, and let's click on next. Build provider, let's click AWS Code Build or Jenkins. So obviously we are going to choose Code Build that I have already discussed. And in this Code Build, we are going to region, the same region we have to select. Then project name, the project name, we have to create a project, right? So here it's very careful. This portion you have to create a project. Let's click on create a project, which will open a fresh new page. And over here we have to select a couple of things over here. So project name, let's give a name. So Spring Boot CI/CD, that's all. Next, anything else, right? So we are okay. I don't want to make any changes over here, right? Operating system, runtime, image, everything is fine, right? So we are okay with service role. We'll go with a new service role, right? Then any additional configuration, right? So we don't need a build spec. Build spec file is needed, right? We need a file called a build spec file, which will have the pipeline instruction, right? What has to be done, right? So whether we have to do some testing as well, or whether we have to do a package or whatever we want to do, right? So that's for that we need a build spec file. So I'm going to create a build spec file. For time being, I'll choose the use build spec file, and by default the name of the build spec file should be buildspec.yaml file. Don't want to make any changes, we'll keep it buildspec.yaml file. Before going to this step, what we are going to do, we are going to create a buildspec.yaml file. Where are we going to create it? Let's go to our IntelliJ IDEA and in our root folder, right? So right now this is our root folder, and over here we are going to create a new file, and I'm going to name this file as buildspec.yml file, right? So this is the file that we are going to create right now. Look at this is the file, right? Buildspec.yml file. So let's open the file and let's type something. What are all things that we are going to type? We are going to type the pipeline steps. What are the pipeline steps that we want to write? So I already have written those things, and I'm just going to, I don't want to type that long thing. I'll just copy that from one of my previous projects. So I'll just copy that and I'll be adding it to this. And all that we need to change, right? So you see, this is very important, right? So during the build, we need mvn clean package, and these are not very important post build commands, right? Just to printing some message, that's fine. And this is very important, artifacts. So artifacts is our, what is the file name that finally, what is the file name it is going to build, right? So we already have this name, right? So we'll just expand the target folder, and it is spring boot cicd.jar file. So we'll just write here spring boot cicd.jar file. This is the jar file that will be created after we build that application. And next we have to write one more option called discard paths, for, you know, just to say that we don't want target and all such things while storing the file on AWS, right? So we want it to be stored on inside the root folder directly, and we don't want any additional path like target. So that's what we are saying. So that's all that we need to do. We have to save it, and we just need to make a commit here, right? Otherwise our pipeline will fail, because right now we don't have it, right? So added buildspec YAML, right? So that's cool, right? So, and we'll just commit and push. Let's do a commit and push, and it will be committed and push. So what we'll do right now, we'll go and check our Git repository, what and all things that we are having in this repository. Let's refresh this. And right now we have this, but unfortunately I'm not having my POM file and so on, right? So by mistakenly those were missed. So I'm doing one thing, right? So I'm just going to make sure that application.properties, then some of the other files, POM XML file, and all the important files are present, right? So I'm just going to commit and push it once again, and let's make the push. This is a very important file, obviously. We shouldn't miss it, right? By mistakenly it didn't get added, but we have to add it manually. So let's see right now, and let's refresh this. We are getting all the important files. Buildspec.yaml file, I told you it's very important, and other files as well. So let's do one thing right now. Let's go back to our project. Okay, we are in this page. So here we don't want to make any changes. I don't want to, you can write buildspec.yaml, but by default it's buildspec.yaml only. You don't need to make any changes. And anything else that you want to do right now, that's fine, right? So continue to code pipeline. That's cool, right? So let's click on continue to code pipeline. It will take you back to this page, and you will get this, your project name over here, right? So Spring Boot CI/CD, everything is fine. And what we are going to do, I'm going to go with the single build, and anything else I don't need. I'll just click on next and deploy providers. So the last thing right now we have to provide, right? Where we are going to deploy. So we are going to deploy it on, so there are again so many options, right? We can use different services. As I told you, you can use Elastic Kubernetes service or Elastic Container Service, anything we can use. So right now we are going to use AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So make sure to choose AWS Elastic Beanstalk from here. And then obviously we are going to choose the same region and application name. So right now automatically the application name is coming Spring Boot CI/CD. Let's choose the application called Spring Boot CI/CD and environment name. So automatically the environment name also will come. Configure automatic rollback on stage failure. That's an optional thing. If at all you want, you can do that. I don't want it. I mean, it's a very optional thing. Click on next. That's all we are done actually. And let's click on create pipeline. Okay, so the pipeline has been created, and right now you would be able to see that the pipeline has been started, right? So first of all, it is going to pull the code, right? So whatever the last commit that I have done, from there it will pull the code, right? So you would be able to see that yes, it has pulled the code, right? So it has been done, right? So you'd be able to see the details, right? right now would be able to see that this was the last commit, right? Added buildspec.yaml file, which was my last commit message. So it has pulled that, and now look at this, whether the build is successful or not, right? So we have to wait for some time. The build will take some time actually. So in the build stage, those steps that we have written, right, mvn clean package, that's going to be takes place, as well as it is going to build the jar file, as well as it's going to at the last stage, which is deploy stage, wherein it is going to deploy it. So build, I believe build is done, right? So no, it's still going on, right? So we can see the progress of it as well, right? So we can click on view details and would be able to see the logs, right? So whatever the logs, right? So if you would be able to see the logs right over here, right? So what and all things are happening behind the scenes. So it will download a lot of Maven dependencies actually, and that's why it is taking so much of time. So unlike our local machine, wherein our Maven dependencies are already being saved in our local M2 folder, which is not there on AWS, of course, and that is the reason why it is downloading a lot of Maven dependencies right now. So once it is done, right, you see that it has been successful, right? So it is been successful. And next one is the deploy stage. Of course, it will also take some time because it's being deployed on AWS. So this deployment stage, you can click on view details and you would be able to see the progress. Also, you can go through directly on your AWS Elastic Beanstalk to see what's happening here, right? So this, okay, I'll just close this, right? So this is our Elastic Beanstalk. So deploy is also successful. That's really great, right? So in the first run, we are successful to, execute the pipeline entirely, right? So we didn't fail anywhere, right? So all these stages, whether it is pulling the code or building the artifact or deploying the application to AWS Elastic Beanstalk, everything was successful. That's really great. Now what I'm going to do, obviously I didn't make any changes. So if at all you are coming here and if you refresh this, you'll get this hello world only. Let's change this message right now. So right now I'm not going to do anything. I'll just gonna go to my code and I will just update the code over here. So let's go and open the some code, right? So the API that we built, right? And hello world, well done, right? Cool. I have added this, and let me make the commit, right? So we have the changes, and let's make the commit, right? So whatever the changes that we have done, this is the change, and I'll just write a new message, right? Updated. What did we update? Updated the API. Okay, cool. Updated the API, and let's click on commit and push. Let's push it. Obviously it will get pushed, and we can check it on our browser as well, right? Here the new update has been pushed right now. So look at this, it has been pushed right now. Okay, just now, right? So you can see that just now it has been pushed, right? So we got this recent commit, right? Updated the API. That's cool. Now, is it being fetched by AWS code pipeline? Let's look at this, right? So you see just now, right? So look at this, and updated the API, right? So this is the latest commit, isn't it? Right? So this is the latest commit has been pulled. And let's wait for the build process, right? So it is in progress, right? And again, it will take some time. It's in progress, and I believe it would be done in a minute. Okay, build is also done. You see, we are getting a green sign here. And lastly, the deploy process, right? So it's in process, right? So just wait for the deployment to be completed. And you see the deployment is also successful, right? So look at this. It feels so nice when we see the last step is successful. Now all that we need to do is to go to this page and let's refresh this. Boom, we got it. Hello all, well done, right? So that's how you will deploy your application on AWS using AWS code pipeline. And that's what CI/CD is. So whatever we have done right now, so we have our Git repository, we created our code pipeline, we deployed our application on AWS Elastic Beanstalk using this code pipeline, code build and code deploy. That's all. That's quite simple and quite easy to do. Maybe a little bit time consuming, and regarding the pipeline steps or the build spec file, already you will find it on my Git repository. I'm going to put the link of the Git repository on the description of the video. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.